Sheni.
Yochanan the high priest abolished the Misa confession. He also abolished the awakeners and the strikers. Until his days, the hammer used to beat in Yerushalayim, and in his days, excuse me, and in his days, no one needed to ask concerning Demai.
Hadran alach Masefes Sheni. Okay, two Mishnahs in Challah at least.
Excuse me. There we are. Five species are liable to challah: wheat, barley, spelt, oats, and rye. These are liable to challah and combine with one another, and they are forbidden on account of chadesh before Passover, and to be reaped before the Omer. And if they took root before the Omer releases them, but if not, they're forbidden until the next Omer. Okay. If one eats one of them an olive's bulk of matzah on Passover, he has fulfilled his obligation. An olive's bulk of chametz, he is liable to charas. If one of them became mixed up with the other kinds, it's a transgression on Pesach. If one vows to abstain from bread and tubia, they are forbidden to him. So Reb Meir. But the Chachamim say if one vows to abstain from dagan, he is prohibited from these oni, and they are liable to techala and to maisros.
Right. Ein chayavin bechala upeturim mina elu chayavin bechala upeturim mina mashas. The following things are liable to chala even though they're pater from mashas. Leket shecha peah and hefker. Okay, so all these things that are found taken from ownerless property, or that if that comes from atanas la'aniyim, you don't have to take chumas and mastras on them. But when the ani takes them home and grinds them into flour and makes them into bread, he still has to take challah from them. Okay. Similarly, maser rishon shenitla chumaso, where the maceration that the Levi received, he doesn't have to give maser for the maser on it. He gives chumas maser, but that's separate. Okay, maser sheni v'hekdesh sheniftu. Similarly, if you had maser sheni or hekdesh that have been redeemed, as long as they were redeemed, as long as they were in the hands of the hekdesh, let's say, has to have been in the control of the gizbar of the temple at the time that they became liable to masros, and then they got redeemed. Right. There's no more masros on them, but now you're making your dough, you have to take challah. Mosar omer, the leftovers of the omer. So that's so when they do the korban haomer. There's only a certain amount of it that's required to make the actual korban, and the leftovers get distributed among the kohanim, and they're allowed to eat it by themselves. Okay, and I think that is a machlokes. I don't know if that was explicit or if that was in the commentary. I think there was a machlokes about the Mosar Omer. Was it Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is cholek on this Mishnah. He says in Maseches Menachos he states his opposition to this Mishnah. He says that the Mosar Omer also must have masters taken from it, because according to in his opinion, the money for hektish was only for the flour that was required for the midah of the isaron that's needed for the korban haomer, and the rest of it was not it didn't take on the hekdesh, right? So and therefore there's not even a need to redeem it. But the halacha is like us, the Mishna, not like Rabbi Akiva. Okay. Furthermore, if you have unripe produce, it hasn't reached a third of its ripeness, then it is also it's not liable to mastros. But if you make a dough out of it, then you need to give challah. Rabbi Eliezer disagrees. He says tavua shelo hevi shlish petura min challah. That even doesn't have to make challah because it's unripe produce. It's not even a proper dough, and therefore it would be patur from challah even. That the halacha does not follow Rabbi Eliezer here. Just going to check if there's something wrong with my mazgan. For a moment it felt like it was blowing hot, but it's not. Okay. Mishnah Daled. Elu chayvin b'masros peturin min challah. So now the reverse case, what things you do have to take masrus on, but you don't have to take challah on. Okay, well, that's going to be anything that's not from your five types of grain.
Right.
Orez, dochan, pragim, shumsamin, kitnios, papa. Okay, so that's rice and millet and poppy and sesame and legumes. All of these things, you could grind them up into a flour and make a bread out of them, and you wouldn't have to take challah on it because it's not a proper bread.
Also,
Pachos mich.
also said, and less than 5/4 of grain.
Yes, I was about to say that
Oh,
one. Pachos mechamesh revayim betua. So then, if the quantity is too small, you still have to take masters of it. But if the quantity is too small for challah, you don't take challah. Hasufganin. Now this is a kind of a sponge cake. It's a very thin batter cake, which is more like a cake than like a bread. But duvshanin. Duvshanin is a kind of a fried thing. It's fried in honey.
Honey cake, right?
Okay, but eskritin, which Kati explains is kind of a tzapichis.
What? Paste, P-A-S-T balls, paste balls.
They're also they're also a thin batter and they're fried. Chalas hamasres. What is chalas hamasres? It's a pancake. Is that right? Chalutza b'machvat. Yeah. Okay, it's a pancake. Bahamaduma. Now that's a different category altogether. That's not type of thing. That's chulin that got mixed with truma.
Right.
So because chulin mixed with truma is not allowed to be eaten by a non-kohen, it has to be sold to a kohen anyway. So there's no need to take challah from it because by definition it's in the possession of a kohen.
Yeah.
And that kohen now who receives it, now even though, so the kohen has purchased the meduma and he's allowed to eat it, but when he makes his bread, he might think, okay, well, hold on a second, I've got, let's say this is 50% chulin or 75% chulin in here. Maybe I should take challah from this just to separate it. And the answer is no, because it's meduma. There's no hue of separating it out. It's all got to be treated as truma anyway. It's got to be eaten in that same kedusha. So there's no need to separate out challah from this. Kulan p'turin mina challah.
It says here at the end, though, if one took more than 5/4 since after deducting the 100th of the truma, there remains 5/4 of the chav of chulin, the dough is liable to challah.
Sorry, say that again.
It says, however, I'm in the middle of a sentence. So, however, if one took more than 5/4, then since the deducting of 100th of the truma, there still remains 5/4 of a kav of chulin, the dough is liable to challah.
If one took some out, this is in commentary on which about isa shenasa mekemach shehu pachos me. Okay, ויש סוברים שהשיר הוא 15 רבעים הקו, כלומר מעט יותר מ-15 רבעים. Okay, no, that's not sorry, is this the commentary on the last point that you're saying?
The last point.
Okay, Mashim Isha Kvar Hi Truma.
It says here, just according to the Rash, meduma is exempt from challah only if it contains less than 5/4 of chulin. Thus, if one saw of truma became mixed up with the 99 saw of chulin, and one took from this mixture 5/4 of a kav of flour and turned it into dough, then since 100th of the truma is it exempt from challah. However, then he gives that. That's a little. I don't know how you measure.
Yeah, so that's I think he's a minority opinion. I think he's just bringing the Rash as another opinion on the situation, because I think the pshat is that that the whole thing is basically got a din of truma, and therefore there's no need to separate out further challah. But the Rash is saying no, that's only if the original chulin was less than the 5/4, but if the original challah was of a quantity that is enough, then you would have to take challah from it. But that's that I think is the minority opinion among the Rishonim. Okay. Mishna Hey. Isa shetchila sa sufganin v'sofa sufganin. So let's say he changed his mind in the middle. We're starting out with the case where sufgan, and we saw that in the previous Mishnah, the sponge cakes that they're patur from taking challah. It's not a proper bread dough. Okay, patur min challah. So we saw that already as in the previous Mishnah. Okay, now tchilas ha'isa v'sofa sufgan. He started out making a proper thick dough, and then he decided to change it and to make it thinner and fry it. Or the vice versa. Tchilas sufganin v'sofa isa. He started out as sufganin and then later turned it into a thick dough. Chayevas b'challah. In both of these cases, there's a chiyuv of challah, because as soon as it becomes a thick dough, it becomes chayev in challah and it doesn't lose that. And the same thing goes for haknuv kaos. Knuv kaos is
made of breadcrumbs cooked as a dish for small children.
Yeah, right. Made of breadcrumbs. So, so the whole thing is it's nonetheless a dough, and it does have to have challah taken because it comes from a dough mixture.
They're calling it sponge cake here, but the sufganim, it almost sounds like sufganiyot.
Yes, that's right.
Right,
that's where the name, that's probably where Eliezer ben Yehuda took the word sufganiyot from, is from the Mishnah. Okay, he didn't just make up words.
Right.
He based them on he based modern Hebrew words on words that he found in Tanakh and Mishnah.
But a sponge cake is made differently than a donut and a sufganiyot. I think it's not fried or anything. It's baked.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, the donuts are spongy.
Yeah.
They're fried. Okay.
Okay.
Masa Sheni Dalet Vav.
If he drew from him Misa for a seller, and before he could redeem it, its price stood at its 2 sellers, he gives him a seller and profits from 1 seller, and the Misa Sheni is his. If he drew from him Misa for 2 sellers, and before he could redeem it, its price stood at 1 seller, he gives him a seller from Chulin and a seller from Misa Sheni. If it was an Ama Aretz, he gives him from Demai. If one redeemed Misa Sheni but did not designate it, Rabbi Yossi says it suffices. But Rabbi Yehuda says he must specify. If one was speaking to a woman about her divorce and her betrothal and gave her a bill of divorce and her gift of betrothal without specifying, Rabbi Yossi says it suffices, but Rabbi Yehuda says it must specify. If one set aside an Isser on account thereof he ate half of it and went to another place where it was worth a punyan, he may on the account of it eat for another Isser. If one set aside a punyan and on the account thereof he ate half of it and went to another place where it was worth 1 Isser, he may on the account of it eat for another half. If one set aside an Isser of Ma'aser Sheni, he may on account of it eat for an 11th part of an Isser and for 100th of an Isser. Beit Shammai says throughout 10, but Beis Hillel says in the case of certain 11 and in the case of Demai 10. So in other words, he's eating in one place and it's worth this much, and then he goes to another place and it's worth another value.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Okay.
Okay, and we said that the end of this Mishnah Ches was one that they spilled much ink over and nobody could make head or tail of it.
Right.
All right, Trumos Yud Ches.
I don't know about you, but I don't know. Donuts are not a big thing for me. I mean, they look like a donut, but it's not. I never got into donuts. I just,
Well, donuts are the trifecta of unhealthy.
Yes,
it's white flour, oil, and white flour, oil, and sugar. It's like it doesn't get worse than that.
I know. I don't like it for that reason. I just don't care for them really. If one pickled an unclean fish with clean fish, if an earthen vessel upholding 2 sides of the unclean fish weighs 10 zuz in Yehudan measure, then which is 5 sellers in Galilean measure, its brine is forbidden. Rabbi Yehuda says a quarter and 2 saws, or Rabbi Yoshi says 1/16 of it. If unclean locusts were pickled with clean locusts, their brine is not tended unclean. Red Tzaddik testified that the brine of unclean locusts is clean. All that pickled together are permitted except with leeks. Leeks of chulin with leeks of truma, vegetables of chulin with leeks of truma are forbidden, but leeks of chulin with vegetables of truma are permitted. Okay.
whichever's got the leeks have got the particularly strong taste.
Oh, you told me you didn't. You tasted it
Yeah.
once. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Demai Vav Gimel.
A priest or Levite who leased from an Israelite, just as they share the chulin, so they share the truma. Reb Eliezer says the maestros also belongs to them, for they came onto that condition. If an Israelite leases from a priest or from a Levite, the maestros belongs to the landowner, and Reb Yisrael says if a provincial leases from a Yerushalmi, the maestros sheni belongs to the Yerushalmi. But the Chachamim say the provincial can go up and eat in Yerushalayim.
Right, there's no reason why he has to give his Ma'aseh Sheni to the Yerushalmi because he himself can go to Yerushalayim. It's different when you have a Kohen or Levi who intrinsically are the only ones who can have the portions that are due to them.
If one leases olive trees for oil, just as they share the chulin, they also share for truma. Reb Huda says if an Israelite leases from a priest or from a Levite olive trees for oil, to share half the proceeds, the maestros belongs to the landowners.
Okay.
How do we shave a nesek? He shaves around it, leaving 2 hairs immediately adjacent to it, so that the spreading will be noticeable. If the Kohen confirmed the nesek with blonde hair, which disappeared and reappeared, or there was an expansion either initially or at the end of the first week, at the end of the second week, or after having been declared tahor, the nesek maintains its previous status. If the Kohen confirmed the nesek with expansion, which disappeared and returned, and the same with blonde hair, at the end of the first week, at the end of the second week, or ever having been declared Torah, it remains as it was. 2 nesachim side by side are separated by a row of hair. If the row of hair is then split in one place, the nesachim are tameh. In 2 places, the nesachim are tahor. How wide must the opening be? 2 hairs wide. If the row of hair split in only one place, even if it split the width of a grist, the nesachim are tameh. 2 nesachim, one inside the other, are separated by a row of hair. If the row of hair split in one place, the affected person is tameh. If it's split in 2 places, he is tahor. How wide must the opening be? 2 hairs wide. And if the row of hair split in one place, the width of a grist, then the nesachim are tahor.
Hey Gimel.
If 10 tests, in 10 tests, our father Abraham, peace be on him, was tested, and he stood up to all of them. This is to make known how great is the endearment of our father Abraham, peace be on him. 10 miracles were performed for our ancestors in Egypt, and 10 miracles at the Sea of Reeds. The 10 plagues, the Holy One, blessed is He, brought on the Egyptians. In Egypt, the 10 plagues at the Sea of Reeds. With 10 trials, our forefathers tried the Holy One, blessed is He, in the wilderness. As it is said, they have tried me now 10 times and have not listened to my voice. 10 miracles were performed for our ancestors in the Holy Temple. No woman ever miscarried because of the fragrant smell of the sacrificial meat. The sacrificial meats never became spoiled. A fly was never seen in the temple butchering area. A seminal discharge never occurred onto the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. Rains never extinguished the fires of the altar. And the winds never overcame the columns of smoke rising from atop the altar. No cause for disqualifications were ever found in the Omer, the Shtei Lechem on the Lechem or the Lechem upon him. They who assembled in the temple would be standing crowded together, yet prostrated themselves in ample space. No snake nor scorpion ever harmed anyone in Yerushalayim, and no man ever said to his friend, "The space is too restricted for me to stay in Yerushalayim." It's interesting though because the Kohen is worried about it in a mission, and he goes to all these,
In order to prevent it. That's right. So there's still even though there was a nace happening at the time, but these nisim only happened in the first mikdash, by the way.
Right.
But there's hishtadlus as well.
All right.
I think the last one that nobody ever complained that there was no space. I think the nace was that nobody complained.
Right. 10 things was created on the first Sabbath at Eva Twilight.
No, we've done that. We're done with Amos. We're into Yevamos now.
Okay. This goes the other way. Okay. If a woman went overseas with her husband, and then she came and said, "My husband died," she may remarry and collect a ketubah, but her co-wife is forbidden. If she was a Yisrael's daughter married to a Kohen, she may eat truma. These are the words of Rev Tarfon. Rabbi Akiva says this is not the way to deliver her from sin. Rather, let her be forbidden from remarrying and forbidden from eating truma. If she said, my husband and then my father-in-law died, she may remarry and collect ketubah, but her mother-in-law is forbidden. If she was
Right. Why is a mother-in-law forbidden? Because a mother-in-law is one of the relationships that's called
right.
What are they called? They're hostile to each other,
Right.
and so she might be trying to be okay. So she's messing herself up as well.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but you know, they were so worried about the hostile relationships that they might say Tamus nafshi plishtim, you know, like Shimshon said, I'll go down, but at least let bring the plishtim with me. So
I don't know why people say she'd be hostile, but okay. She was a Yisrael's daughter, married to a Kohen. She may eat truma. These are the words of Reb Tarfon, and Rabbi Akiva says this is not the way we deliver her from sin. Rather, let her be forbidden from remarrying and forbidden from eating truma. If someone betrothed one of the five women, but does not know which one he betrothed, and each one says, I am the one betrothed, he should give a bill of divorce to each one, leave the ketubah payment between them, and withdraw. These are the words of Reb Tarfon. And Reb Akiva says this is not the way to deliver him from sin. Rather, let him give a bill of divorce and the ketubah payment to each one. If someone stole from one of the five people but did not know from which one he stole, and each one says he stole from me, he should leave the stolen amount between them and withdraw. And these are the words of Reb Tarfon. Rabbi Akiva says this is not the way to deliver him from sin. Rather, let him pay the stolen amount to each one. If a woman went overseas with her husband and son, and then she came and said, my husband died and then my son died, she is believed. If she said, my son died and then my husband died, she is not believed. However, we consider her statement, and she must therefore perform chalitza, but not yibum.
right. So the chazaka is that she's going to if she says my husband died and then my son, okay, so that's fine, because then she doesn't need yibum, she's allowed to remarry. But
Right.
if she says my son died first and then her husband, well, this is now you're uprooting something. She's believed about her husband because her husband is permitting her to remarry, but the son is now permitting her to marry her husband's brother.
Right.
Okay, so that we don't allow her to do, but nonetheless, we're cautious that maybe she's telling the truth, and therefore they compel the brother-in-law to do chalitza and not yibum, and
Okay.
she won't be allowed to marry because she's until she has the chalitza, because she, by her own word, has
Right.
said that she needs a chalitza.
Right.
Okay,
All right. You're gonna. I imagine probably you'll be pre tomorrow.
that's been the pattern so far, but you know, I have broken out of patterns before.
Okay.
Okay, have a
Have a
lovely
great
day.
day. You too. Thank you.